Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with Bolognese sauce. That's right, this video recipe is dedicated to the late, great Marcella Hazan, who, for those of you that don't know, was basically the Julia Child of Italian cuisine, and this amazing meat sauce was one of her signature recipes, although I'm pretty sure she stole the recipe from my grandmother. But since I can't prove anything, we're just going to move on, and we're going to start by sweating our aromatic vegetables. So in our sauce pot, we have a little bit of olive oil and a little bit of butter, and we're going to put that over medium heat. And as soon as the butter melts, we're going to go ahead and throw in some finely diced onions, celery, and carrots. And we'll give that a stir with our wooden spoon, the official Bolognese sauce stirring instrument, except no substitutes. We'll also throw in a big pinch of salt to help draw out that water. And like I said, we're just going to cook that stirring until they turn translucent, and they're going to go from looking like this to looking like this. At that point, we're going to go ahead and throw in our beef. And I'm using ground beef. I got some beautiful local grass-fed beef. And we're going to throw that in, and we're going to keep it right on medium heat. And what we're going to do is we're going to cook this for about 5 minutes, stirring constantly, breaking up that meat with our wooden spoon as we stir. And because we have a fair amount of those soft, sweated vegetables, this is going to be very easy to get this ground beef in very small pieces. And when we have it down to basically crumbles, we're going to go ahead and add our seasoning, which is going to be very straightforward. We're going to put in some salt, some freshly ground black pepper, and a little touch of cayenne. And then last but not least, some freshly grated nutmeg. And I don't care if you don't like it. You're going to add this. This is a subtle but very important part of the flavor profile, so do not skip the nutmeg. All right, so we're going to go ahead and stir in the seasoning. And we're ready for the next ingredient, which is the milk. Yes, one of the secret ingredients in this meat sauce is milk. And I'm using 2%, the low-fat milk, which I assume will let us classify this recipe as low-fat. But we're going to stir in our milk. That's going to come up to a simmer. And we're going to cook that until most of the milk simmers out. And I said most of. Do not be a hero and try to reduce this completely. You burn that milk onto the bottom, you are starting over. And by starting over, I mean, ordering pizza. All right, so like I said, we're going to simmer that until most of the milk is evaporated, and it looks like that. At which point, we're going to add the next addition of liquid, the white wine, and a lot of it. I'm going to raise my heat up to medium-high. We're going to bring this to a simmer and then do the exact same thing. We're going to cook this stirring until most of the wine has evaporated, and we're back to that kind of meat paste consistency. And just like the milk, if you go down too far, the wine will burn, so be very careful. All right, so let that simmer until the wine reduces. And once we've simmered off that wine and it looks like that, we're ready for our tomatoes. And I'm going to use a can of San Marzano plum tomatoes. These are packed whole, so all we're going to do is throw those in a bowl and use our clean, bare hand to crush them into a puree. And yes, you could use a food mill or a food processor, but then you wouldn't be able to feel what I'm feeling. And I like it when you feel what I'm feeling. So we're going to crush those tomatoes, we're going to pour them into our pot. We're also going to rinse out the can with a couple cups of water and add that in. And then all we need to do here is let this come up to a simmer, which I'm going to do on medium-high heat. And it's going to look like that, but that's too high. So what we're going to do is give it a stir, and we're going to back that heat down to low, and we're going to keep adjusting it to maintain that perfect, very, very, very gentle simmer. And then all we're going to do is let this simmer just like that for a brief 4 to 6 hour period, or until it cooks down into a thick sauce that's just too good to be true. And you could probably get away with 3 hours, but the longer the better. So this is just one of those sauces that needs to simmer for a really long time on low heat. And while this simmers, if you want, you can spoon off a little of the fat that comes to the top, but that's between you and your cardiologist. I did skim off most of it. And as it cooks, that liquid's going to slowly evaporate. The flavors are going to concentrate. The meat's going to get unbelievably tender. And about 5 hours later, it should look something like this. Or at least that's what mine looked like. And for whatever reason, if this reduces too quickly and it's getting too thick and dry and you want to cook it a little longer, just keep adding splashes of water as needed. And obviously it's up to you on how thick you want to make this. You could keep cooking this and make it even thicker. But for me, that's the perfect texture right there. And at that point, you can turn off the heat because your Bolognese sauce is done. Although we really should taste it and adjust the seasoning. You may need more salt, maybe a little pinch of pepper. But taste and adjust to your liking. You are the Patrick Swayze of your Bolognese, and not Go Swayze, Point Break Swayze. So I tasted and adjusted mine. And at that point, I was so ready to enjoy this with some pasta. Now, traditionally, this is served with tagliatelle, although I'm going to use these mezzi rigatoni, which I think are the absolute perfect shape for this sauce. And you're going to see why very shortly. And you know I like to heat my pasta with the sauce before I plate it. This sauce is just too special to just unceremoniously ladle over the top of some naked pasta. That's not a good look. So I mixed my rigatoni with my sauce. We're going to plate that up. Maybe a little Parmesan or a little Pecorino Romano on top. Maybe just a touch of fresh parsley, and that's it. a fairly classic version of Bolognese sauce. Just one of the great plates of food in the history of the world. And you can see here why I like these mezzi rigatoni so much. You can see how that sauce and all those little pieces of meat get inside the pasta. I mean, that's perfect sauce to pasta distribution right there. And the flavor, just beyond description. So anyway, like I said, this was my take on Marcella Hazan's famous Bolognese sauce. And if you're not familiar with her work, do yourself a favor, check her out online and see why she was such a huge influence. So I really do hope you give this a try. Head over to foodwishes.com for all the ingredient amounts and more info as usual. And as always, enjoy.